In the great hall of justice, there are assembled four of the world's mightiest heroes: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Aquaman. Together, they are the Super Friends.
It's a serious situation. The geek has completely changed the lifestyle of the world.
Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics, history, and action figures. As a kid who grew up in the 1970s and 1980s, Super Friends was a staple of my Saturday mornings. It was something that felt like it had always been there. But the story of Super Friends is far more complicated than that. It was actually 9 separate shows between 1973 and 1986. There was even a 3-year gap at one point. But Super Friends remains a cultural icon. So let's go through its entire history and look at all of the figures produced over the decades. When ABC and Hanna-Barbera jointly acquired the rights to DC characters in 1973, they immediately wanted to adapt the Justice League for television. But with the specter of the Vietnam War looming over everything, they needed a non-violent show to avoid any associations with the military. Naming the project Super Friends avoided accusations of jingoistic patriotism that could come from the Justice League of America moniker. Legendary cartoonist Alex Toth provided character designs and storyboards, and should be credited with the show's classic look. The first season featured 16 45-minute episodes, where nothing really happened.
Unforgivable.
That's terrible.
Criminal. It's not right at all.
No punches were ever thrown, and DC's classic villains were excluded. Instead, the team faced evil scientists while teaching about environmental problems like climate change, drilling, pollution, or other societal ills.
Hey, the Super Friends were woke.
The lineup of that initial season consisted of Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Batman and Robin. And back in 2003, DC Direct produced a series of figures based on Toth's gorgeous animated style. DC Direct produced some absolutely gorgeous action figures geared for collectors in the early 2000s, and I think they're being forgotten about, which is a shame because these figures were totally geared for the collector market. They were almost exclusively available in comic shops, and they focused more on appearance and style and accuracy more so than play value and articulation, and that's completely fine by me. This Superman is a perfect example of this. Look at these gorgeous cartoon colors along with that incredibly accurate Alex Toth head sculpt. I mean, this thing really does look like it leapt right off of your Saturday morning television. Great spit curl, but it's the details of this figure that really work. I think this is a similar sculpt that was used on a previous DC Direct Superman figure, but they have everything right, including the logo on the back of his coat. And the logo here on the chest, if you look closely, is actually carved in. So those paint lines are unbelievably tight, just like with the gold paint on his belt. It's just a really perfectly accurate Super Friends Superman figure. Wonder Woman takes that Alex Toth design aesthetic up another notch. Again, the bright, bold colors, the primary colors all over. But look at how great this facial paint is. And of course, she has this spectacular stylized hair with that little curl up on the back and the big kind of brunette look. Really good. Her lasso of truth is sculpted and attached right to her hip. But one thing about these figures was they actually came in 2-packs. They were paired with one of their enemies, and we'll see those later in the video. But not only did you get 2 figures, but you also got an accessory. And in the case of Wonder Woman's pack, you got this copy of her invisible jet, something that was all over the Super Friends cartoon. In fact, it was even in the beginning montage. And this is stylized so well. It does. It looks like it just flew directly off the screen. And I love this kind of retro stand that it's sitting on. So it makes a really cool display piece with your figures. And talking about display, each of these sets came with a stand with the Super Friends logo. Now, obviously, all these figures are a little bit different, and so they had unique peg holes in each one, and you got a set of pegs. So you could use the same stand, but adjust the peg holes so that every character
was able to stand up, whether it be Superman or Wonder Woman. We all tend to goof on Aquaman these days, but you got to realize back in 1973, he was a pretty cool character. Aquaman actually had his own cartoon animated series that ran from 1967 to 1970. So he was a character that kids were incredibly familiar with. And this design captures that gorgeous orange and green look. It even has like the carved in scales on his uniform. They're not overdone, they're not everywhere. They're just in certain spots like we saw on the cartoon. His blonde spit curl gives Superman's a run for his money, and it has all the details like the fins on the back of his calves and on his gloves. Just a really cool character, and his color scheme really makes him stand out amongst the other Super Friends. Batman, of course, has never not been popular. I mean, the Caped Crusader has been a hit since his first appearance in Detective Comics issue 27. But in the early 70s, he was coming off a really peak time. Not only did he have his own animated show, much like Aquaman, you're also talking about the era right after the Batman 66 live action show that was still actively in reruns. And this version takes a lot from the aesthetic of Batman 67. You can see it has the black kind of shadow paint that goes over the face with the more clear nose and eyebrows, just like Adam West's costume. It has the Carmine Infantino inspired yellow circled bat logo. It's got kind of this is more of the 80s bat belt, but it still very much matches that whole aesthetic. Great scalloped cape. Again, the cartoon colors. And while the articulation is relatively limited on these figures, you have just sort of a T joint here at the hips, little bit of knees, nothing else kind of at the wrist or at the ankles. But the smoothness of this ball joint at the shoulder, while it doesn't really achieve a ton of range of motion, what it does is it maintains the look of the sculpt. And so, again, these were figures for collectors to display, and they display so well. Batman also came with the Batplane accessory. So you get a base very similar to the one for Wonder Woman's Invisible Jet, but you also get this super cartoon accurate Batplane. And this did appear numerous times on the show. And I remember seeing it and thinking about just how awesome it was that Batman had this totally killer plane. So another great display piece for this one. And the last of the big five from that opening series of the show is Robin. Now, this is clearly a Dick Grayson version of Robin with his short tunic, his red top coat, his booties with their little wings on them, and his shorter yellow cape. He's got his great domino mask with the eyes whited out, just like we would see on the cartoon. And again, it's the bright candy colors that really make this represent that animated style so well. Now, Robin's accessory was the Batmobile, and this thing's neat. It doesn't have rolling wheels, but it's got like the engine, the flame throwing engine on the back. It has the two cockpit seats there with the open tops. And while this is clearly inspired by the Batman 67 TV show, it is different. It's not black. It has a little bit of a different shape to the wings, a little bit of a different grille. This is the one that actually did appear on Super Friends, and it's really cool to have just a small 3D model of it that came with our figures.
Figures Toy Company also created an extensive collection of 8-inch cloth costume figures in the style of Mego's World's Greatest Superheroes.
Figures Toy Company was actually founded back in like 1989, but I really wasn't aware of them until they started doing reproduction Mego figures, particularly the DC superhero characters. And that license then expanded to work on things like Super Friends. So this is the Super Friends Superman, and like a lot of these figures, it's a little bit hit and miss. I don't know that that's the greatest head sculpt, certainly not something that I would consider cartoon accurate. The logo on his chest seems a little small, but there's some good. Like this belt is definitely an improvement off of the original Mego belt, and he has classic Superman boots with the notch cut out, which is very different from what we saw on our original Megos. I do like the fact that they included the logo on the back, and this cape has a really nice kind of, silky nature to it. Overall, not bad. A lot of the QC on these is pretty wonky. The heads flop around. We see that a lot with the Aquaman figure. His head is extremely loose, but I love kind of the animated stylings of just the small amount of scaling that he has. Again, he's got a great build. That's really nice. And unlike the original Mego figures that just had the classic oven mitts, he actually has sculpted gloved hands. Those are pretty cool, and they're made of a rubbery material. Great colors on this guy. Just wish that his head would kind of stay in place. Big win, actually, with the Batman figure. This is probably my favorite out of this wave because not only do you get great sculpted boots, great gloves with those little triangle bat logos, great head that I think does look like the animated cartoon, but this cape with the inside black and the blue on the outside has a wire. So you can really get it into some great poses. So that inner wire was not there with Superman's cape, but it makes a huge difference when we're looking at Batman. Same thing with Robin. Robin is a really solid Robin figure, a major step up from the original Mego because of the gloves, because of his boots, and he also has that two-tone silky cape with an underwire. So animated style head looks really good here. These are improvements. Now, they kind of flopped on Wonder Woman. Her body is just not ideal. You know, the original Miko Wonder Woman was in a one-piece suit, so I appreciate trying to go for kind of the open skin look. You know, we've got her magical amulets. This head sculpt is pretty horrifying, to be honest. Don't really love that. Head flops around, not sure what's going on with these hips, can't keep her, suit up. So they're okay. We're gonna see some more heroes, some more toy figures coming up. Yeah, yeah, kind of okay.
But no 1970s cartoon would be complete without kids' sidekicks. And for the first season of Super Friends, we got Wendy, Marvin, and their pet Wonder Dog. Their inclusion was to give the viewer, in this case, kids, someone they could relate to. Mostly, they just existed to get rescued and illustrate the moral of the week, with more success sometimes than others.
Wouldn't it be better if we all cooperated in solving Glacier's problems?
No!
The only toys that I know of these characters came from Figures Toy Company.
Wendy and Marvin, I think, are significant improvements over what we've seen previously with the Figures Toy Company toys. Look at how good these animated head sculpts are. I mean, they really do look exactly like the Hanna-Barbera art. And the clothing, particularly with Wendy, she's got her undershirt, her sweater, her collar, great kind of almost bell bottom ish pants, and this really nice, like leather belt. That is a complete figure for her. And Marvin has his classic stylings with his big M on his sweatshirt. He's wearing kind of his corduroy pants and sneakers, and he has his completely doofy cape going on. So, a couple of great figures. Now, interestingly enough, Marvin was voiced by Frank Welker. Yes, this doofus was voiced by the same guy that did the voice of Megatron. Hard to believe. Now, these two came in a two-pack, and the Figures Toy Company figures were really nice because they have this resealable packaging, so you can drop them in there. The only problem is they didn't include Wonder Dog. But for our only true representations of the Junior Super Friends, Wendy and Marvin, these are pretty good.
And that was it. The series was canceled in August of 1974 with no plans to return. But after a resurgence of interest in superheroes, led by Wonder Woman on ABC, a new series went into production. So after a 3-year hiatus, the all-new Super Friends Hour debuted in 1977. Everything about the new season was bigger. 15 hour-long episodes, each divided into 4 segments, keeping the moral lessons, but upping the action and introducing new guest stars to fill out the league. And of course, who could forget the Wonder Twins, Zan, Jaina, and their space monkey Gleek. The 77 show also introduced brand new characters, a group of ethnically diverse heroes meant to showcase different cultures.
Hey, I told you Super Friends was woke. Zan and Jaina are another example of where Figures Toy Company really continued to improve with their product over time. You can see both of these look great in their purple on purple outfits with their absolutely pitch perfect logos. The heads are far closer to the Hanna-Barbera animated style than on those original figures that we saw. And Jaina even has like her little kind of curl right here on top. Now, one of the disadvantages of these gloves is they do tend to come off from time to time. You see this, they were kind of glued in place. And once they pop off, it's a little hard to get them back on. But that is outweighed by the original belts and these two-toned boots. And that little bit of detail with that yellow striping makes a huge difference in the overall look of these characters. But where this told you, it just falls right off. But where this two pack really shines is they actually remembered to include their pet sidekick, Space Monkey Gleek. And this guy just looks terrific. Look at his little bendy tail, his cartoon accurate head sculpt, and his outfit is so good with his belt and his cape. He does have some articulation. He bends at the head, he bends at the shoulders, a little bit here at the hips. But this guy in cloth costume just looks so awesome. But as great as these are still my second favorite versions of the Wonder Twins, because Mattel released these two figures as 2009 San Diego Comic-Con exclusives. Yeah, here are the Wonder Twins as the kind of 6-inch figures that we really want to see. Now, the purple of their outfits is a little bit darker than what we just saw, but it still certainly works, and you can see all of the details are there. Although, I'm not exactly sure. It looks like Jaina's belt may have fallen off. We're going to see another version here in a minute. So these were released only through the Comic-Con, but they did get re-released on the Matty Collector website. But one thing that you had to go to San Diego to get was Gleek. He was handed out at the Mattel booth during that 2009 Comic-Con, and he was only available there. He was not subsequently put on the website like Zan and Jaina were. So this cool little Gleek is actually one of the more rare figures in my entire collection. But as awesome as these two were, this is actually one of those rare instances where the package was better. Y'all know that I am an out-of-package collector, and I have made a rare exception for this Wonder Twin set that I have kept in its original box for going on 16 years now. It's an interesting display because, as you can see, Jan is here on the outside. He has his water bucket that he can change into. On the other side, you have Jaina. Her belt is on there. And there was an eagle that I'll have to find. It must have popped out. But where this package really goes is when the Wonder Twin powers activate. Get ready for this.
Form of water. Shape of an eagle. Let's save those kids. I'm with you, Wonder Brother.
How incredible was that? If you open the package, there's a connection where the Wonder Twins come together. There's lights and sounds, and it still works 16 years later. You can see why this is one of the very few packages that I would ever save. When you open it up, it also has an incredible diorama scene where Jaina's turning into an animal, Jan's turning into some kind of water thing, and Gleek is right in the middle. But the fact that this thing works and demonstrates their powers is just so amazing. Black Vulcan was originally meant to be the character Black Lightning, a long-standing DC hero, but because of rights issues with creator Tony Isabella, Alex Toth and the team at Hanna-Barbera created an all-new character and called him Black Vulcan. I love the design of his mask with like the lightning bolts and then how that motif carries on through his suit. Obviously, the Figures Toy Company has a little bit of kind of skinny legs there, but that's fixed by the Mattel DC Classics version. The Mattel team really loved the 80s, and I think a lot of that came to the sculptors, the Four Horsemen who worked on that line, who were huge fans of Super Friends and Super Samurai is a Japanese hero who was introduced in the Super Friends cartoon in 1977, and I think both companies did a really nice job with this figure. You can see the soft goods on the Figures Toy Toy Company really kind of create that open chested look, and he does have his classic top knot on his head. But the DC Universe Classics really takes it to the next level with this awesome translucent sword and this incredible stern facial sculpt with that great mustache and even having like the band around his knot. This is a rubbery plastic. It's not a soft goods, but it holds its shape so well and really creates that awesome profile for samurai. Apache Chief is our Native American character, and he's the one that I actually remember the best from my childhood. You can always remember him saying, Apache Chief, and then growing in size. He constantly seemed to be fighting the former Wonder Woman villain, Giganta, and maybe that's why I remember him so well. I love the little tunic and the soft goods here, but for the Mattel DC Universe Classics, Apache Chief was actually the Build-A-Figure, and he is deserving of his size. He was in the same line as the other figures from the Super Friends wave that we've seen, and I love this guy. He just really towers over the rest, just as he should. And our final edition of our culturally diverse heroes is El Dorado, the Mexican hero. Now, he did not appear in the 1977 cartoon. He didn't make his first appearance until 1981, but he fits in so well with the other three, I thought we would talk about him here. The Figures Toy Company is actually really nice. A lot of detail on the boots, and his unique Aztec garbed outfit is pretty well done with his cape, but you can see all of that detail so much better on the DC UC figure. Look at the intricate sculpting and the Aztec iconography here on his outfit. He has kind of those almost wrestler boots with the laces down here. So there's a lot of touches across multiple aspects of Mexican culture in this figure. I really like his design, and I wish that he had a bigger role in the DC universe because he just seems like such a cool dude.
Hawkman here. I'm not sure why I'm not in this video, but if the intersection of comics history and action figures is your thing, then subscribe to Carbon Scoring because we're bringing you this action every week. The show reached its pinnacle with the 1978 season Challenge of the Super Friends. Finally, we got to see
The Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom.
and we've got the action figures to prove it.
Oh, the bad guys in this line are so much fun, and no one is more fun than Lex Luthor. Ooh, he looks so good. This is kind of that powered up suit that he would wear not only on Super Friends, but also during the Super Powers era. And it has so many details, like his little jet boots with the engines down here, the stripe on his pants. I think these may be like kryptonite canisters that he has across his chest, but it really comes down to that maniacal smile, that bald head and those incredible eyebrows. Just such a gorgeous piece. He obviously came packed in the 2-pack with Superman, but the accessory that they came with was none other than the Legion of Doom itself. Yes, coming up out of the swamp. Is that not an image that haunted your childhood? Now, again, this show came out in 1978, and there was a movie that came out in 1977 that I think we can all say probably directly influenced the look of the Legion of Doom headquarters, and that's, of course, Star Wars and Darth Vader's helmet. But however you shake it, what a cool accessory for the king of the bad guys. Cheetah is a great figure. She obviously came paired with Wonder Woman, but she really catches that cartoon aesthetic with that bright, bright yellow and her little cheetah spots. And the paint work on this is so good, not only on the cat eyes of that face, but each of these spots actually is sculpted in. So they're not just painted on details, they're painted plus sculpted, even on her articulated tail. It's got a little bit of an underwire in there. Super cool, and you can use it to help her stand. You know, these DC Direct women figures are notoriously difficult to keep up on a shelf, but they're totally worth it when they're as good as Cheetah. Sinestro obviously came paired in the 2-pack with Green Lantern, and while Sinestro has gone on to become one of the most vile and evil villains in the entire DC universe, this one really captures his purple-headed, goofy nature. I love the exaggerated, almost caricature sculpt of this head. Great color scheme, and his yellow power ring is really well done with a tightly painted lantern right there on the ring. Just a super good figure, one that has so much personality with that receding hairline and little kind of mustache. So cool, just the embodiment of silly evil in the 70s. I believe that Riddler was paired up with Robin the Boy Wonder, and he's probably the weakest out of all of the villains that we've gotten. And that's saying something because it's still actually a really cool figure. That fluorescent green with the giant purple question mark just really stands out. And he does have a unique facial sculpt with a lot of expression going on with the one cocked up eyebrow and kind of the mouth cocked up at one side and the eyebrow on the other. I don't know what it is with the bad guys and male pattern baldness, but certainly that is definitely a recurring theme here. Overall, a really good character. They reused this exact sculpt on the Riddler Silver Age figure in the DC Direct line, but a good addition to any Legion of Doom. Scarecrow was a really unique choice for this line, and one that required a completely dedicated sculpt to capture the animated look from the series. Look, there's so much detail here with the rip in his pants and his bell bottoms, the rope hanging around both his waist and almost like a noose around his neck. He has his gloves and the pinched sleeves of his shirt, but it's that head that captures the creepy, ghouly look of Scarecrow from the cartoon that is just so awesome. I'm actually surprised that this figure isn't more in demand because can't you see this being used in any kind of Scooby-Doo sort of display? And I'm certain there was a lot of overlap between the Hanna-Barbera Scooby-Doo animation team and the Super Friends team, but Scarecrow here could absolutely fit in any Scooby-Doo mystery. And then I saved my favorite design for last. Black Manta, who came packaged with Aquaman, just looks awesome. I have always felt like that head, that helmet with its air tubes going back into his backpack was such a cool look. That solid color scheme really makes the eyes set off. And while he does look more tough, more badass than the rest of the villains, there's still that cartoony aspect to him. Plus, he came with one of the coolest accessories, his Manta sub. Definitely one of the best vehicles in the history of the DC universe. The Manta sub with its two like tendrils coming up and the open glass, the lighting, just the entire design of this is so cool on the retro base. Just such a great combination of figure and accessory. Two more heroes join the Super Friends, and of course, they are none other than the Brave and the Bold, that dynamic team up of the Flash and Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. Both of these utilize that relatively simple, sculpted body that we've seen with the DC Direct figures. Hal himself looks really great with his classic color scheme, kind of right out of a 1960s cartoon. Of course, he has his power ring with all of the detail painted right on it. And just like in the cartoon, you can see his pupils through his mask. So that's a nice touch and definitely a callback to the show. Flash is the Barry Allen version of Flash, and he's got a great smile that really kind of tells his personality. Super good posing. Love that big logo on the chest. And this is a Flash that definitely kind of brings out some of those cartoon vibes. I think it utilizes a sculpt that we had seen on a Silver Age Flash before, but with an all new head to really capture the animated Hanna-Barbera look. Green Lantern came packaged with this incredible miniature replica of the Hall of Justice. Oh, does this thing not take you back and give you incredible memories? Just look at that facade. That is so cool. Now, the Hall of Justice is actually based off of a real building. It's based directly off of Union Terminal in Cincinnati, Ohio. And whenever I make it to Cincinnati, I've got to go see that thing because this is like the definitive superhero headquarters of my childhood.
The show would carry on for a few more seasons, mixing reruns with new episodes and introducing newer characters such as Firestorm to the fold. 1984's legendary Superpowers show attempted to tie in with the Superpowers toy line that was on shelves at the time. And for the final season, it was renamed Galactic Guardians, and Black Vulcan was replaced by Cyborg. But after 16 years, they finally called it quits. But in 2025, McFarland Toys brought Super Friends back with an all-new line of action figures.
Unfortunately, McFarlane's first set of Super Friends figures duplicated ones that we had already received from DC Direct, but it does give us a chance to kind of look at them in comparison. Batman here has more similarities than it does differences. The masks are remarkably similar as well as the head sculpts. Probably the biggest difference, other obviously than the size, is McFarlane is a little bit darker with its blues and it has a soft goods cape, which I typically tend to like. But because the color doesn't perfectly match this cowl, it's a little bit distracting in that sense. Now, what McFarlane did here is he utilized the body molds that they were already using for the Batman 66 figures. I think that's actually a really smart idea. Certainly, these body types fit really nicely with that, and it allows for the line to continue relatively quickly. Unfortunately, I don't know that these are going to completely fit in with our older figures, so that's definitely a drawback. But all in all, a really nice Super Friends Batman. Again, the Lex Luthor figure from McFarlane is far more similar to the DC Direct one than it is different. They both hit all of the classic features. Both of them have the boot jets, both of them have the little packs, and they both got those great collars. They're also really similar in articulation. Even though this is a modern figure, it only has those typical T joints at the hips, whereas they both have relatively decent ball joints at the shoulders. The McFarlane does have again a little bit of a darker color style and a little bit more realistic skin tones, but I think that the head sculpt on the DC Direct is a little bit more cartoon accurate. So again, here we go, two great choices. Obviously, this is one that you can pick up now for way less money. For Sinestro, the DC Direct gave us a perfectly sculpted, unique, elongated body, whereas McFarlane used their same base body as the other figure. So I think it's definitely an advantage to DC Direct. Also, that cartoonish head with that Vincent Price style mustache, while it's here, it's just not quite the same on this figure. One area where McFarlane did have a significant advantage was with the accessory, where you get the yellow power ring created set of pliers. So I may just switch the pliers over to this one and put that in my display. The one figure where I think McFarlane has a clear advantage over the DC Direct is with Green Lantern. Now, they both have that classic Gil Kane designed original suit, but there's something about the McFarlane head. Perhaps it's the fact that you can see the eyes far more clearly, and I think that that hair is a little more cartoon accurate compared to the one that we get here. I think this body was kind of a reused Silver Age Green Lantern, whereas we get something new with this. Plus, I really like that larger logo and the brighter colors of McFarlane's Green Lantern. The second wave has already been revealed, including a much more cartoon accurate Flash and the first true Super Friends versions of Toyman and Mr. Freeze. And leaks suggest a third wave with Bizarro, Brainiac, and yes, Zan. Could a fourth wave with Jaina and Gleek be far behind? Now, more than 50 years on, the enduring legacy of Super Friends continues to entertain the next generation, enlightening us and encouraging our better impulses.